Welcome back to Chhoti Duniya, where magical stories and unforgettable adventures await. If you love tales of courage and destiny, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's dive back into our epic adventure. A furious storm was brewing over the floating islands of Aeloria. The sky, once a brilliant azure, had turned a tumultuous shade of gray, casting long, menacing shadows across the glowing rivers and jagged cliffs that define this mystical realm. On the edge of a vast crystal plateau, a young man named Ethan stood firm, his gaze fixed on the turbulent horizon. The strange, intricate mark on his hand throbbed, a rhythmic pulse of raw energy that mirrored the chaotic dance of the storm clouds above. He could feel the power within it, a wild, untamed force that was both a gift and a burden. Beside him stood Lena, her presence, a beacon of calm amidst the brewing chaos. Her trusty staff glowed with a faint, ethereal light as she scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Her voice was steady, yet laced with an undeniable urgency. "This is it, Ethan," she said, her words cutting through the howl of the wind. "The Seeker's leader has finally come for you. Everything you have learned, every battle you have fought, has led to this moment. Your choices today will shape the fate of the entire realm." Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling upon his shoulders. He thought back on his journey, the countless trials and skirmishes that had pushed him to his limits. Each one had been a lesson, a way to understand the mysterious mark etched into his skin and to unearth the courage he never knew he possessed. But this felt different. This confrontation vibrated with a finality that sent a chill down his spine. The very air around them began to ripple, distorting the landscape like a reflection in troubled water. A chilling voice, deep and commanding, echoed across the plateau, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "So, the child has grown," it said, a sound that resonated with ancient power and cold amusement. From the swirling shadows that gathered at the far end of the plateau, a figure began to emerge. He was tall, impossibly so, and his form was wreathed in a darkness so profound it seemed to devour the very light around him. This was the Seeker's leader, a being of pure menace. His eyes, glowing like two pits of molten fire, fixed on Ethan with every step he took. The ground trembled, the crystal of the plateau groaning under the immense pressure of his presence. He was not just a person. He was a force of nature, a walking embodiment of shadow and fear. Without a single word of warning, the leader raised a hand, and from his fingertips, tendrils of pure darkness snaked across the crystal plateau. They moved with a terrifying speed, hissing as they tore through the air, intent on ensnaring Ethan, reacting on pure instinct. Ethan raised his own hand, the one bearing the mark. A brilliant shield of radiant light erupted from his palm, meeting the encroaching shadows with a thunderous impact. The collision was deafening. Sparks of light and shadow exploded into the sky, a chaotic firework display that momentarily illuminated the storm clouds above. The leader let out a cold, hollow laugh, a sound that sent shivers of pure dread down Ethan's spine. "You've learned to fight, but can you truly control the realm's power?" he taunted, his voice dripping with condescension. "That mark is not a toy, child. It is a key to forces you cannot possibly comprehend, and I am its rightful master." The darkness around him pulsed, growing thicker, more menacing, as he prepared his next assault. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, shutting out the terrifying sight of his adversary. He took a deep, steadying breath, trying to silence the frantic beating of his heart. He needed to focus, to connect with the power thrumming within him. The mark on his hand pulsed warmly, almost as if it were whispering words of encouragement, reminding him that he was not alone in this fight. It was a part of him, an extension of his will. With a newfound sense of resolve, he opened his eyes, his expression hardened with determination. He lifted his hand again, but this time, something was different. The light that poured from his mark didn't just form a simple defensive shield. It extended, flowed, and shaped itself according to his will. Spectral blades of pure light materialized, spinning through the air with deadly precision. Whirling shields of energy formed around him, deflecting stray bolts of shadow. Floating orbs of radiant energy danced in the air, a beautiful yet deadly constellation that responded to his every thought. Lena watched from a safe distance, her eyes wide with astonishment. Ethan's control over the mark was growing stronger with every passing second, evolving right before her eyes. He wasn't just wielding a weapon, he was conducting an orchestra of light. Angered by this display, the leader struck with a massive wave of pure darkness, a tsunami of shadow that roared across the plateau, sending powerful shockwaves that cracked the crystal ground. Ethan reacted instinctively, his fear and determination merging into a single, powerful impulse. The light responded in kind, every pulse of his mark sent out brilliant beams of energy that met the shadowy onslaught head-on. The two opposing forces collided in a spectacular display of magic and skill. The battlefield became a blur of motion sparks, energy waves, and flying debris filled the air as the immense powers of light and shadow clashed for supremacy. But the leader's power was immense, his shadows relentless. For every wave of darkness Ethan repelled, another, even stronger one, would rise to take its place. The sheer, overwhelming force began to push Ethan back, step by painful step. He could feel his energy draining, the light beginning to flicker under the constant pressure. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Was the leader right? Was this power too much for him to handle? Suddenly, a flash of brilliant gold and silver light cut through the dark storm clouds above. A majestic figure descended from the sky, hovering just above the chaotic battlefield. It was Arion, the wise and powerful guardian, his presence like a ray of sunshine breaking through the storm. "Ethan," he called out, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the din of the battle. "Remember what I taught you. The mark is more than just power, it is a connection. It binds you to the very essence of this realm. Draw strength from it, and from those who stand with you." Arion's words resonated deep within Ethan. He glanced at Lena, who gave him a firm, encouraging nod. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for her, for Arion, for all of Aeloria. He looked down at the crystal plateau beneath his feet and felt a new kind of energy flowing into him. It was the energy of the land itself, ancient and powerful. He allowed it to flow into him, to merge with the power of the mark. His mark began to glow brighter than ever before, the light so intense it was almost blinding. Intricate, glowing patterns spread across his arm, and the light surged outward in a massive, unstoppable wave, pushing the encroaching shadows back. The Seeker's leader roared in pure fury, enraged that this mere boy could command such power. The time for toying was over. With a guttural cry, he abandoned his ranged attacks and lunged at Ethan directly, his shadowy form a blur of motion. In that split second, as the embodiment of darkness rushed towards him, Ethan had a profound realization. Raw power wasn't going to be enough to win this fight. He had to be smarter. He had to anticipate his enemy, predict his moves, and act with strategy, not just brute force. The mark on his hand seemed to agree. It pulsed in harmony with his thoughts, guiding his body, reacting instinctively to the leader's ferocious strikes. Ethan dodged, his movements fluid and precise. He countered, his blades of light clashing against claws of shadow. He struck back, unleashing a dazzling combination of light and raw energy that seemed almost alive, anticipating the leader's defenses and finding the openings. The entire battlefield shook with the intensity of their close-quarters combat. Energy crackled in every corner, and the very air seemed to vibrate with power. Finally, with a perfectly timed and executed blow, Ethan struck the leader square in the chest. The leader staggered backward, a cry of pain and disbelief escaping his lips, his shadowy form flickering and retreating into the swirling storm clouds above. Breathing heavily, every muscle in his body aching, Ethan slowly lowered his hand. The mark's blinding glow softened to a steady, gentle pulse. The immediate danger had passed. Lena and Arion rushed to his side, their expressions a mixture of pride and serious concern. "You've done what many great warriors could not," Lena said, her voice filled with admiration. "You faced the leader and forced him to retreat." Arion placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "But this is not the end," he added, his tone grave. "The leader has withdrawn to lick his wounds, but the Seekers are still out there, hiding in the shadows. Your journey, Ethan, is far from over." Ethan looked at his glowing mark, then out at the horizon, where the storm was beginning to subside. For the first time, he understood the true weight of the role he had been given. It wasn't just about power. It was about courage, about relying on his allies, and about using his head as much as his strength. The realm had tested him, and he had not only survived, but had grown stronger and wiser in the process. But he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that somewhere out there, in the deepest shadows, the Seeker's leader was waiting and plotting. The final confrontation would come, and when it did, the fate of Aeloria would rest entirely in his hands. The next step he took would determine everything. To be continued. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. For more magical stories and epic adventures like this one, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Chhoti Duniya. We can't wait to see you again for the next chapter.